everyone. Welcome to another episode of What's New in Prisma, which will be hosted by myself and my colleague Niko. And we will be going over Prisma's 4.12 release today. And we also have a few other interesting things lined up today. We have two guests that will be joining us. One is Eliya, who is the creator of SafeQL. And we have Arnau, who is the creator of Prisma Utils. And I apologize, I probably mispronounced both of their names. So
it's nice to see you, Tasin. I'm also really looking forward to today's episode, and I think we have some really great guests who contribute to the richness of Prisma's ecosystem and who saw some kind of tools or matters in their own hands and themselves. So that's great.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so we will kind of start by going over the release notes. So let's get to it. I hope my screen is visible to everyone.
Yes, it's there.
Okay. So the first, this release, we have a bunch of updates to a bunch of preview features. The first one, and a very interesting one, is we have an update to our introspection support for views. So views is a very recent feature that essentially allows support for database views in Prisma. This is a very, very demanded feature that people have been asking for quite a while now. And we're happy to have support for views finally in Prisma. And what this release adds is an update to the introspection. So essentially, now when you use introspection with Prisma using Prisma DB pull, and if you have this preview feature enabled, what will happen is all of the views will get added as SQL files inside this views folder inside your Prisma directory. So it's very much like the migrations directory inside Prisma. It will be another directory that will contain a bunch of SQL files that will basically be the views that are already in the database. So one important thing to understand about this, though, is these files don't really do much in the migration workflow at the moment. So this is mentioned here. It's not used for creating or updating the views during migration yet. You still kind of have to do a lot of that a bit manually, unfortunately. But it's kind of building the scaffolding that will eventually make these migration workflows more smooth when it comes to views.
Yeah, the views have been like in high demand indeed, and I think it's really nice that we're kind of like making steady progress integrating all the views functionality to the different components of Prisma, right? It's already like possible to add them to the Prisma schema, but now with this release, people can also introspect their databases and they can expect the views to actually show up in the introspected schemas.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, Views works pretty well with the Prisma client itself. It's the kind of CLI migration workflows that is steadily improving, and hopefully in a few releases that will also be as frictionless as creating a table or something else. So the next thing is improvements to JSON protocol. So in the last release, we announced a new preview feature, and this feature is essentially an implementation detail. It's not something that's super relevant in terms of day-to-day usage. Essentially, what the JSON protocol is, it's the way that the Prisma client communicates with the internal Prisma query engine. Previously, we were using this custom protocol that looks a lot like GraphQL. And for performance reasons, we decided to shift to JSON. And what this release adds to this JSON protocol's preview feature is better error messages. In the last release, you could still use JSON protocol, but some of the error messages were not the most intuitive or user-friendly. And with this one, that should improve a little bit.
Nice.
And finally, we also have improved the startup performance for Prisma Client. This has been an overarching theme this quarter. A bunch of the releases we did have had performance improvements, and this is kind of in that general kind of direction of improving the performance of Prisma Client, especially for things like cold starts. So again, this should mean that with 4.12, Prisma client startup performance should be better than it used to be. So that's great. And finally, open telemetry tracing as well as logging are now supported in the Prisma client for data proxy. So these were two features you could previously use with the Prisma client, but not when you were using it alongside the data proxy. But now that's no longer an issue. You can also use them if you're using the data proxy.
Sweet.
We also have a few fixes and improvements, of course, which you can read over if you're interested, if you go to the releases. And since we have a lot of preview features, I just want to remind anyone who wants to try these out that we have GitHub issues asking for feedback for all of them. We need your feedback to improve these features, fix bugs, etc. So it's really appreciated. And so feel free to leave any feedback, your thoughts, any problems or bugs that you face by going to in our GitHub and going to the relevant issue. Yeah, so that's pretty much it for the release. I guess we can move on to our first guest today, which is Eliya. Eliya is the creator of SafeQL, and I will add him to the stream now if he is ready.
Hey.
Hey, Eliya. How are you doing?
Hey, Eliya. Nice to see you.
I'm good. It's Eliya. Yeah, I'm good.
Eliya.
Yeah.
Extremely sorry.
That's okay.
Yeah, Eliya, it's great to have you join. It's great that you're joining us today. I would ask that you give a short introduction of yourself and maybe talk a bit about what SafeQL is.
Okay, sure. So my name is Eliya. I'm a software developer in Medfleet. We're a service. We're a software service, and we have we had an issue that we had like thousands of queries that it was a bit hard to keep track of. So I built a tool that helps us avoid many issues when we write SQL queries. So this is where SafeQL comes into play. Basically, it's a tool that helps you write SQL queries safely in a way. I mean, I can't find the right words. I mean, it helps you automatically infer the types, the return types. It helps you mitigate unexpected issues such as typos and picking the wrong columns. And I can show an example if you want.
Yeah, of course. So as far as I understand, it's a ESLint plugin.
Yeah,
Is that
yeah.
correct?
So I
Okay.
wanted to make it like as easiest as possible. So I built it on top of ESLint. Like
Mm-hmm.
you just need to plug your the rule to ESLint, and everything should be working. I'll just share my screen so we can see a basic example.
Okay,
So
that sounds great.
yeah. Okay. I showed my screen, but I think I don't see it here. Oh, cool. So this is a pretty basic project that uses Prisma. As you can see here in the file, there's nothing complicated. Just want to make things simpler. So we have only two models, user and post. User has many posts, and that's pretty much it. Now, I want to show you a basic example. Let me just check. Okay, of how we use Prisma, like in the easiest way, right? For example, I want to get the title of a post where its ID equals to 1, right? So what we usually do is um, we we use the find first of row, and then we just console log it. So if I try to run it, sorry, I'll get hello world, which is okay. But let's imagine like this is a very complex query, and we cannot do that with Prisma. It can be we can have it can be like maybe we're using a method that is not supported by Prisma, or maybe the query that is being generated isn't optimized. So let me just try to rewrite it into with SQL, and then we'll see how we go from there. So okay, so
This is so nice
this is pretty
already.
much the query. What?
It looks so nice already.
Oh no. So this is pretty much the query. Now, if I try to type it here and then rerun the code, I get the exact result, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, but we have a few issues. The first one is if I hover on row, I'll see that I have unknown type, which is we don't want that. So usually what we could do, we could write manually, we could type manually the type here, but it doesn't guarantee us that it will be the actual type. I mean, someone else could actually accidentally change it to ID, and then when we run it, we'll get undefined. So yeah, that's the first issue. The second issue, we could accidentally forget to wrap in double quotes something that should be case sensitive. So what will happen? Actually, here we'll get an error. So I already installed SafeQL here. I just need to uncomment these rules. I can get deeper if you want later. Just uncomment this, and then when I go back, I'm getting errors here. The first one, relation post does not exist. So if I try to wrap it with double quotes, I get a different error. It says query has incorrect type annotation. Well, I was expecting for title string, I got only ID number. So once I change it to title, everything should be okay. And if I run it again, everything in fact is okay. Now I can go even to a bit more complex query. For example, here, I'm using the toCharacter method that I want to get the total posts for each year of the month, of each month, sorry. So currently, this is not possible, as far as I know, using Prisma with a single query. So here we have to use a raw query. So as we can see here, we get an error that says that I need to add type annotation, and I don't actually have to type it myself. We could just auto fix it and do it here. And we could, if we want, we could, for example, make things nullable. For example, here, I think, no, that's my bad. I mean, if we want, yeah, there's actually nothing, there's, nothing much to talk about this plugin. It just works. It does one thing and it does it well. I have an example here of many issues that can be solved using SafeQL. For example, here it says name does not exist, or here the users does not exist, or when I try to compare an integer to a string, a text, that's not possible. It will be always false. Or when I try to compare it to an actual variable that is a string, it won't work here as well. Or when I try to use a method incorrectly, there's no length with an integer inside, there's only a text inside, for example. So if I try to change it here, only then I'll get the actual type annotation. And many, many more. Syntax errors. If I accidentally added a comma here, I'll get a type error. If I have a missing type annotation, then it will help me. Or if I wrote it wrong, then it will help me as well. And yeah, like I could, for example, yeah, here it says that I accidentally in the Prisma file wrote that the name is nullable, but it turns out to be good for this demo because now I can demonstrate that it does identify nullable columns. And if we want, we could actually write as follows as well. That would be okay. And if I accidentally do another thing, such as this, it will tell me that this is the wrong type. And yeah, that's pretty much it.
That looks really, really nice.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. The first time I tried it, I was like really surprised at how powerful and useful this is, because at least speaking from the Prisma side, one of the like friction points when using Prisma is the type annotations, and the type safety is amazing when you're using the main client. But whenever you have to drop down to the SQL level and use the raw query function, you lose all of that. So it's very easy to make mistakes. It's not always clear what types you're getting back from like the query. So the user experience, like the developer experience, really diminishes when you're using raw query. And I felt that SafeQL goes a long way to fixing that. So I feel like it's doing a lot of things for me. One, it's making sure that I get nice types from the objects that get returned. And it also helps me like avoid mistakes if I'm accidentally mistyping a table or a field or anything like that. It immediately lets me know, which is super cool and super useful.
Yeah. Yeah.
I have to ask. So
Sure.
how is it actually doing this? So
Oh, okay.
thinking like it's connecting to the database somehow, and
Yeah. So usually, I mean, it only exists in PostgreSQL. You can
mhm.
get the query description. I mean, when you have a query, I don't actually need to execute the query to understand what I will get. I mean, the columns that I'll get. For example, I know exactly which columns I'm going to get, and from which table at what position. For example, if I type select name from user, I know in fact that the column name is from the table user. And even if I try to type select name as another column, I'll still know that the column is it's actually named. And this is like 90% of what is SafeQL, and the 10% are like a bit more, some improvements. For example, it doesn't. Try to think of. Okay. What query description doesn't give you? It doesn't give you the ability to know if a column is nullable or not. I mean, it could be nullable in the table, but you may want to left join it, and then it can be nullable. So what I do after I introspect after I get the query description, I pass the query. I try to understand which column is from what table, and if it can be nullable. And in the future, it can improve many other things. Now, how it actually works, if we take a look at the configuration file, you can see that I passed the migrations directory, and what it actually does, it makes a shadow database in some way. I mean, it actually creates a database behind the scene and run the migrations, and then each query is run on the shadow database instead of your connection. Although if you want, you could pass your actual connection instead of your migration directory. I wouldn't recommend that, but it's possible. And the tag name is just a way to tell ESLint, SafeQL, where exactly you want to get the validation. So, and this is actually very powerful because if you have a large code base, you don't actually want to integrate SafeQL and fix like hundreds of queries. I'm not sure what the scale, but where I work, we have thousands of queries, actual SQL queries. So integrating SafeQL isn't actually trivial. So what we could do is we could do something such as typed query row, and when I go here, I could do const typed query row, which would be Prisma. So basically, in runtime, it would be the same, right? I mean, nothing special. But as you can see here, I don't get any errors. But once I do that, I could incrementally adapt type safety across all of my queries without like making a gigantic pull request. And
I
of
see.
course, if I type fix it here, that should be it. Yeah. Yeah, maybe I need to fix the actual. Yeah, it's not doesn't exist here. It's here, but point delivered.
That's really interesting. And the last feature you mentioned about being able to like progressively adopt type safety is also really
Yeah.
nice to have in big code bases. Yeah, this is a really amazing tool, and what's so nice about it, it's not even like Prisma specific. It works, as far as I understand, across almost all of the major ORMs
Yeah.
that support PostgreSQL.
Yeah, and the best part is like if you're not satisfied with SafeQL at some point, you can just decide to opt out. There's nothing that runs on runtime. Yeah. I mean, it's built. It's just a tool that can be plugged out if you don't want it in the future. So I don't see any reason not to use it actually, if type safety is something that matters to you.
Yeah, we also have a lot of comments from users who have mentioned that they think it's really cool as well. Mohad mentioned that it's great, and also Velino. So yeah, hopefully more people using Prisma will try out SafeQL. And so the website to give it a try is safeql.dev. Of course, there's also the GitHub repo. But yeah, I think it's really awesome, and thank you for building something so cool, and also for supporting Prisma.
Sure.
Yeah, thanks for sharing, Eliya. It was really great.
Thank you everyone.
Hello, and we are back.
This was really cool, right?
Yeah, I know. Like the first time I tried it, it really blew my mind how easy to use it is, and how much it just does out of the box with very little effort or overhead. So yeah, it's a great tool.
And I think it really complements it really complements Prisma Client really nicely, because we hear a lot of people complain that when they need to drop down to raw SQL, that we don't have this integrated SQL query builder, right? I think this is something that some other object relational mapping tools actually do have, and that Prisma at the moment we don't have it yet. We have a couple of open issues that are related to that, but we don't give you anything out of the box if you have to write raw SQL. And so I think SafeQL can be a really good companion when you find yourself in a situation where the native Prisma Client API doesn't meet your needs anymore, and you have to drop down to raw SQL to implement a certain use case. That's when SafeQL can really be a huge help in your Prisma project. So yeah, thanks a ton again to Eliya, who worked on this project and took the time to share it with us today.
Yeah, absolutely. And another great thing about it is it's just an ESLint plugin. So yeah, if you're using ESLint already, it should be very hassle-free and frictionless to set up.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we can move on to our next guest today, which is Arnau, who is the creator of prisma-import. And if he's ready, we will just move on to that.
Hello.
Hello. Hey Arnau, nice to meet you.
Doing?
Nice to meet you guys.
I think we should start with asking, like, how do you pronounce your name? If you could share with us, please.
So I get this question a lot. Actually, for English speakers, it's quite easy. It just two words that are and now. So Are and N-O-W, and then you just say my name right. It's Arnau.
Arnau. Yes, got one right.
Interesting. Where are you based, actually, Arnau?
I live near Barcelona, just 20 minutes away.
All right, you're in Spain.
Yes.
My geography didn't let me down this time.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, Arnau, it's great to have you on the stream. I would ask you to maybe introduce yourself a bit, and then we can also talk about prisma-import.
Yeah, so as I said, I'm Arnau from Barcelona. I am a software engineer in a company here next to Barcelona. I've been in software engineering for, I think now, close to 4 to 5 years. Actually, my career started as a graphic engineer, as a graphic designer, and I pivoted to software engineering, and then now I'm just really happy that I did that move, because I'm able to combine both design and engineering, and that's like quite powerful. For at least I can bring a lot of value in my company with that. And yeah, I'm 23 years old, and that's who am I.
Nice.
Okay, that's awesome. So maybe you could tell us a bit about prisma-import, what it is, and what it does.
Yeah, so there's this issue in Prisma that I think it's the if I'm not mistaken, it's the most upvoted issue in the repo. And so I actually, in my company, we were having some issues because we were having so much of a schema. We were reaching nearly 3,000 lines, and it was beginning to be like quite a nightmare to find. At least when onboarding new people, it was difficult for them to like kind of see the bigger picture of how our database worked. And so just I was bored one weekend, so I decided to give it a try. I first started with trying to modify the prisma-AST with Rust to actually make it understand import statement, but that was like really difficult because I think Prisma is really based on the one schema like principle. And that was a deep rabbit hole that I wasn't ready to go down. And so then next I thought, how could I modify the VS Code extension so it would understand import statements. The idea, what I knew was that the Prisma like formatter and linter needed to receive like one single schema that was valid for it to work. It couldn't work with multiple schemas, and it is quite challenging to keep up with all the changes in the engine. So I wasn't going to take that road. So I went for the VS Code extension. And so based on the principle that Prisma had to receive a single valid schema, what I did was modify the language server, Prisma language server, and then the VS Code extension. So they knew they could work with multiple files at the same time, and also added the syntax and everything for import statements. The work behind the scenes. Can you hear me?
Yes, sorry. I think there was some issue on my end. If you could just give me a second.
Yes.
We do still hear you though.
Okay. So what I was saying was that I did all this work to the existing VS Code and Prisma language server, so they could understand and know what imports were. And the work behind the scenes is quite a bit more complex. If we can go through it if you want, but it's quite mental to what I actually need for it to understand and know, because I also had to, the response from the formatter and linter was based on that schema, that virtual schema that I made up. So it understood it, but the user only knows about 3 separate schemas that they are working on, not one single virtual schema that they don't know. So I also had to reformat the answer from the Prisma formatter and linter to make it work across files, make the auto completion when you miss a relation for it to actually edit the other file and not ignore it. So yeah, I have a small demo ready if you want me to go through it.
Yeah, that would be awesome. Please do.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, let's see. What? Okay. Wait, I think. Do you see the terminal in the middle?
Yes.
Okay, I think you should be seeing that. It's like it froze. Let me stop sharing and go sharing again. Okay.
Maybe you could zoom in a little bit. It would make it a bit easier to see.
Yeah, I think it freezes because I'm moving the screen and then it isn't doing anything. Let me see if by sharing only the VS Code window it works.
Oh yeah, sure.
Let's see.
Now
Yes.
there is
Now it
a
works.
moving cursor.
Yes. Yes, it works. Okay. How I talk from the point of view of what we did in my company. We actually migrated all the schemas to use prisma-import. So it was quite it is not an easy task because you have to add all the imports, split everything up. But I can say at least from our end, it's quite worth it because now we can see like the bigger picture. And since we work with modules and in deep folders, we can actually nest the schemas to where for us they make sense, and then merge everything up with the extension and the CLI. So where you would want to start is by having a file. This is not mandatory, by the way. It's just how I do it. I usually have a file called index where I keep all my generators and my the data sources and generators, and then I go from there. So we can create a new folder called catalog where we will keep all the tables for our e-commerce. We're selling products. We have categories, we have brands, we have and products. So we can have a file that's product.prisma. Then we'll have a model that's product. We have a name. Then we can save that, and we can create another file, which is our categories. We have another model. Oops. And then each product is tied to a category. So we have the category relation. We actually see the models that are not actually in this file, but are in the other file. You can see it auto-completes it based on the files you have in your open folder.
Nice.
So
that's
we
super
add
cool.
So we can see here that it says auto-import from blah, 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 category .prisma. And we can actually import this, and it imports it from that path. And now, if we save, we had a normal Prisma. If we save, it would autocomplete this and not the category ID blah blah blah. So if we save, we can see that it added category ID. It modified the category schema, and we can go here and see that it added the missing property. We can actually import this. Now change it to where it belongs. Okay, so can keep going. We also have brands. And then each product is tied to a brand. You can import the brand, you see it here. And now it's only a matter of saving. We can see that here we have the auto-completion. And that's it. You can actually go through, so it has some linting on the import paths. If I make this wrong, it will tell me that it cannot find the schema at product.schema. If I mistype the model, it won't also let me work with it. Then we can also import multiple models from the same file. Let's say we have say we are doing. Let's say that this is this, and this is our localized table, so we can also import it here. We get auto completion here also, and then we can use it. You can do it.
That's great. What I really like about it is that it really feels like the regular VS Code extension, right? It still properly formats and inserts the right relation fields at the right places, but it even will do that across files. So that's really nice and really impressive. It's just like the same behavior, just as you would expect from the regular VS Code extension, but across multiple files, and that's really nice.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that was. Sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, I just said absolutely. I agree with what Niko said.
So the main goal was to take what was existing, because it is a really nice extension, the original one. So I just wanted to build on top of that, and that's what I did. I just started modifying things until everything worked, and then I also when you're done splitting your schemas and you want to actually join them, because Prisma needs to know what's your actually schema.prisma file. So it can do the migrations and generate the client and everything. We also build a CLI tool that just, it doesn't do any magic. It just reads all the inputs you give it, and then outputs, merges all files and outputs it into a file you specify. So the command is prisma-import. You can access it by npx. You specify an output file that in our case is schema.prisma. Then you
We
have
can't see your terminal, by the way.
my bad. Let me switch it up. 1 second. Oh, maybe I can open
You
the
can
VS
use the
Code one.
integrated one. Yeah.
Yes, I never use that. Never. So you can do npx prisma import. Then you specify where you want your output to be. In our case, will be schema.prisma. Then you specify where your schemas are. So in our case, they are inside models. So we do in quotes. We do models. We can use how's it called, the
regex.
Yeah. So you can match multiple paths with the same string, and you do this. And then we say that we want our output to be in schema.prisma, and our models are located in models, and all the files that end with .prisma. Then we can run that. Then we see that we have a new file here that it merged all the models with their file name on top. And that's a valid schema that Prisma can use to generate all the client and everything.
That is awesome.
So one question I have is, since you use this at work and you said you have quite a big schema there, how do you then actually structure the individual files? Is it just one model per file basically? And then you have maybe like folders in the same way that you showed. You have where you like maybe then group by features. So here you showed like the folder that was called, I think, catalog, and then you had product, brand, and the category models inside of there. Or is there more to like how you structure these?
So we've used this in a couple of projects, and we actually switched how we approach the issue in both. In one, we work like kind of similar to Nest.js, that has the module with same directory. There's the controller, the service, and everything else. So we have the schema there. We'd have user.controller, and we'd have user.prisma. And then we'd have product.service and product.prisma. And inside that product.prisma, we would have multiple tables that are related to that product model. So basically, what we do is we group tables by what the service actually reads and writes. So if my product service writes to pricing and whatnot, I would also have the pricing table there. And then in another project, we switched it up, and we used a similar approach to this one here, where we have the repos divided with Yarn workspaces. We have one workspace that's only for Prisma, and there we have all the migrations. We have the client's singleton, and we have the migrations and the schemas, and also some generators that for Zod and all that. So we have both versions. Yeah.
All right, that's really interesting. And yeah, the experience is just so nice. There are actually quite a few tools that can stitch schemas together in Prisma, but I have to say that I felt like the developer experience with prisma-import was so far my favorite. It really feels like it's a first-party integration and a first-party feature. So yeah, it's a really great library.
Thank you.
Yeah, all right. So again, thank you for joining us today and for sharing what you built. It's a really cool tool. We will then move on to the next section of our stream. And yeah, bye, Arnau.
Bye. Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks a lot for joining us. This was great.
Whoops.
Nice
Okay, you go.
Very good.
All right. Yeah.
That was awesome.
All right. Yeah, it was. And we have quite a few fans, especially internal fans like Sabin, who is our internal Prisma Import champion, who actually I think he was the first person to share the library with us internally. And yeah, so if you want to try Prisma Import, here is the GitHub link. Sorry, Niko, I cut you off maybe.
Yeah, I just wanted to add that indeed, like Sabin built his library for schema stitching, like Prisma schema stitching called Aurora, I think. And I think if I remember correctly, on his first stream as a developer advocate here at What's New in Prisma, we also talked about it. So for those folks that are interested in that, they can go back and find that episode. Although to be fair, I think the tool that he built can't really compete with prisma-import because one of the things actually that he was lacking in his tool was the proper management of like relations across files indeed. So that behavior just wasn't there, and you had to kind of polyfill the relations in one file to make the VS Code errors go away, if I remember correctly. So yeah, again, even more impressed by the tool that that was built by Arnau with prisma-import.
Yeah, so I think we're almost at the end of our stream. We do have a few questions. Maybe we can go over those, and then we have a few announcements to make. So the first question is from Mohad. It's asking about an update to the MongoDB driver. So first of all, is there an update to the MongoDB driver? At least maybe not in this release, at least based on the release notes. And if about this specific question, I'm actually not super sure about this. I think the best place to ask this would be in our GitHub discussions, and someone from the team will pick up the question and get back to you about it.
Indeed, yeah. And it seems like it's a question about an update for a specific feature request, Muhat. So if you know that there already is an existing GitHub issue for that, for example, you can also ask for a status update in there. And if there isn't a feature request for that yet, then you can also just go and create a new GitHub issue that will then be included in the planning by our product and engineering teams. So that's usually the best way how to draw attention to any features that you wish Prisma had.
Yeah. And another question is there any advancements in integrating Prisma with Dino? Unfortunately, again, I don't think there's any advancements in this release. It's still, I believe it's an early access. It's in some non-GA iteration at the moment. Feel free to try it out and give us feedback. There's a GitHub issue for it where we're collecting feedback from people. But yeah, unfortunately, no advances in this release.
Yep. And if I remember correctly, like, was it Ryan Dahl who was here on the stream like a couple of weeks ago, one of the Dino creators? So if you haven't watched that stream, then you can go back. I think it was the one in December that we hosted with him. And there you get a lot of context, and I think maybe also a little bit of light on the roadmap with Prisma and Dino.
Yeah, that's a great suggestion. I guess that's all the questions. Someone asked about Arnau's VS Code theme, but the answer is already provided in the YouTube chat. So it's Celestial, if anyone is interested. Yeah, it's a really nice looking theme, not gonna lie. So we do have a few small announcements. First, just to let everyone know, we have a few new articles in the blog, particularly in our Nest.js series and testing series. The testing series is now complete. It has 5 parts. It covers pretty much all the different main aspects of testing, like unit testing, end-to-end testing, integration testing, and CI integration, like continuous integration. The Nest.js series also has a new article about handling relational data, and we'll have another article soon about authentication. Yeah, and again, just to remind everyone, we have issues for giving feedback in all of these preview features and early access features, and it would be great if you would try them out and give your feedback. Niko, do you have anything else that you'd like to bring up or share?
I have one more thing, and that is that in our GitHub discussions, so we frequently have people that reach out to us on Slack or on Twitter who are really excited about the Prisma community and who are seeking for ways to give back to the community by helping each other. And of course, we have GitHub discussions. There is Stack Overflow with a Prisma tag, but it's not always, I think, so obvious where you can provide help, because when you look at a GitHub discussion, it often requires some kind of internal Prisma knowledge that really only our own internal support engineers or developer advocates have access to, because they can reach out to the Prisma engineers and then ask for clarification about these questions. So what we have introduced this week was a new label inside of GitHub discussions that we call Community Help Wanted. And these are the kind of discussions where our support team figures that this can easily be taken on by someone who has a little bit of Prisma experience already, because it's a straightforward question, probably coming from someone who's a little bit more new to Prisma, and that won't require any internal knowledge or no back and forth between the person who's asking and the person who wants to respond to it. So I'll drop the link to that also in the comments. This is a link to GitHub discussions that also shows you the label right away. So at the moment, we have 2 GitHub discussions that are labeled with this new label. And yeah, feel free to go ahead and pick one of these if you want to help other Prisma community members.
Yeah, that did not transition well to in the view, so maybe just go check the link in the YouTube comments.
Yep,
but
fair.
yeah, it's a tag in our GitHub discussion that you can check out if you want to help out. All right, I guess that is all for today. Thank you everyone for tuning in, and we will see you in another release in a few weeks.
Yeah, see you next time.